SPD also did not check George Zimmerman's vehicle or impound it. They didn't bother to ask neighbors if they recognized Trevin, who had been staying with his father and Brandy Green in a condo complex. The 17-year-old and everything represented as a human being had been put on a shelf marked John Doe. ABC News was correct when it reported that Trevin Martin's body sat in a medical coroner's morgue for 3 days with that marking, John Doe. Rachel Gentle also was correct. Within 48 hours, the SPD homicide investigators never did call the last person Trevin talked to in an attempt to identify this young man's body, or Himmler's bedbugs and rats, vermin. Law enforcement and analysts tell ABC News that George Zimmerman sounded intoxicated or perhaps under the influence of a trance, of a drug or a substance, in his call to the police that night. SPD never gave him a toxicology test, which is standard in homicide cases. With the first 48 hours, SPD literally entertained, wined, and dined the hunter and released him. Toxicology evidence for the hunter's urban terrorist report was white clean. That is a signpost up ahead. And your next stop is George Zimmerman and multi-personality disorder. There are 4 pathways to this: childhood abuse, childhood neglect, factitious, and lethargic, which means unwilling by the therapist or doctor. Accidentally done. Also, the SPD didn't record and ask about the hunter's rather unique theater tattoo, which looks very much like Janus, the two-faced god that I've been telling you about. He was marked with that. George Zimmerman carries the mask of Janus, theater masks or comedy tragedy mask, on his left arm. Again, left-hand path. Now, during the golden age of Greece, the 2 masks were symbols for theater. They are the comedy and tragedy masks worn in ancient Greece. Plays were written in honor of the god Dionysus, god of fertility and procreation, and were either tragedies or comedies. The actors played multiple roles, so the mask was used to show a change in character. Zimmerman's masks are absolutely consistent with Heinrich Himmler's principle of dualism, the two-faced Janus, face of the master deception. Himmler conditioned the SS to be multiple personalities and two-face, one kind and decent gentleman, while the other dissociated, cruel, evil, homicidal, on trigger. George Zimmerman had been scientifically implanted with Himmler's classic satanic dualism, which he didn't get that tattoo after he had started to patrol the neighborhood for the dog. Big boy. Now, after slaying of Trevin, you should notice that the hunter, George Zimmerman, appeared at times under somewhat of a trance. We understand that the urban terrorist had been spellbound by military MK Ultra mind-altering drugs. He was under the influence of 2 powerful prescription drugs, temazepam, also known as Restoril, and Adderall. That came out later. Adderall is an amphetamine mixed salt that is generally used for treatment of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and narcolepsy, a sleeping disorder. Adderall is highly addictive. It is known to cause worsening mood problems, aggression, anxiety, delusions, depression, hallucinations, hostility. And this is the guy that you put out to be an urban patrol guy. Now, temazepam is a popular interest too, I think, and also a tool of military intelligence mind controllers. Its effects on the mind were secretly medically researched and experimented on widely by the CIA. Temazepam was used under top secret codename Project MK Search, a continuation of the CIA MK Ultra, which we've talked about before. Now, the CIA's Artichoke and Bluebird assassination programs, which we have talked about before, were rolled over into Project MK Ultra, which was created by CIA Chief Alan Dulles, April 3rd, 1953. The MK Ultra was in turn rolled over into Project MK Search, June 7th, 1964. Project MK Search then ran until June 1972, at which point extensive shredding of the MK Ultra and MK Search files was ordered by the director of the CIA, Richard Helms. Among other things known, these CIA programs were searching for the ultimate truth drug, and most importantly, clandestinely developing the monarch assassins and operatives and the Manchurian candidates that have been talked about so many times. Now, the monarch mind control program most likely evolved out of MK Search. Select sub-projects such as Spellbinder, which was a program to create Manchurian candidates or sleeper assassins that could be activated with triggers and code words and sounds. Temazepam is a powerful sedative. Its also amnesiac effects got the attention of several secret intelligence agencies. The drug has strong hypnotic properties. Given to the subject, temazepam weakens the resolve of the subject and makes him or her far more compliant to pressure. You have a tendency to say yes. Temazepam is also one of several drugs used in the research of mind control, brainwashing, mass-scale social engineering by all the secret layers of U.S. intelligence agencies. And you can look that up under 26 at the bottom of the page. Temazepam is also used by military intelligence to maintain subjects in a semi-vegetative states of consciousness for long periods of time. Again, that's the signpost up ahead. Your next stop, racial murder and corpses. To have stuck it out and remain a decent Catholic. One principle must be absolute for the SS men. He must be honest, decent, loyal, and friendly to members of their own blood and no one else. What happens to the Russians, what happens to the Czechs, is a matter of utter indifference to me. We shall never be rough or heartless where it is not necessary, that is clear. We Germans, who are the only people in the world who have a decent attitude to animals, will also adopt a decent attitude to these human animals, but it is a crime against our own blood to worry about them and to bring them ideals. I shall speak to you here with all frankness of a grave matter. Among ourselves, it shall be mentioned quite frankly, and yet we will never speak of it publicly. I mean the evacuation of the Jews, the extermination of the Jewish people. Most of you know what it means to see 100 corpses lying together, 500, 1,000, to have stuck it out at the same time apart from exceptions caused by human weaknesses, to have remained decent fellows. That is what has made us hard. This is a page of glory in our history which has never been written and shall never be written. This again was written October 4th, 1943, from Heinrich Himmler to the SS group leaders. In SPD custody, directly after the slaying, Zimmerman appeared to be under no unusual dismay or stress. He was uncannily cool, collected, calm, utterly indifferent to have just killed a human being, an unarmed teenager. He demonstrated no sense of remorse, but showed a sense of comfort and eases so much that he developed idle, theological, religious conversations with the police officers at the time. SPD officer Singleton testified that Zimmerman asked if she was Catholic. After noticing a cross around her neck, he reflected philosophically, in the Catholic religion, it is always wrong to kill someone. We know that to have being as self-serving deception of the mind control programming that was fed to the jury and the masses of the people by the SPD and the prosecution as evidence of George Zimmerman's state of mind at the time of the slaying. The always wrong to kill someone, Roman Catholic, was one of Zimmerman's perhaps alter personalities and a real classic example of Himmler's classic Janus, two-face, dissent, fellow kind of dualism here. Under the Nazis, many Roman Catholics had developed a classic deprived and ghoulish preoccupation with divine providence, at work with satanic principles, dualism in madness, torture, mass murder. There seems to be more Roman Catholics that were in the SS, the world's greatest ritual mass murderers, in local militias that worked with the SS, than there were religious, conscious objectors to mass murder, believe it or not. Among many of the Nazi leaders, they were Roman Catholics, in addition to Führer Adolf Hitler, were Joseph Goebbels, Heinrich Himmler, Reinhard Heydrich, Heinrich Müller, SS, Rudolf Hess, that ran the concentration and extermination camps. Some of the most sensational, depraved, and utterly ghoulish murders of the Third Reich had been Roman Catholics. Pavlov, which I have a picture of, in Croatia, also considered himself Roman Catholic. These are not isolated incidents, of course. The Ustashi more often than not massacred all the inhabitants of Serb villages, callously torturing and even killing children, and then setting entire villages on fire. In the village of Sesjar, for instance, the Ustashi, after having killed most of the inhabitants, led away about 20 surviving children, whom they tied to the threshold of a big barn, which was then set on fire. Most of the children, average age of 10, were burned alive. A few who survived, horribly scorched, were eventually killed. Eyewitnesses testify to many similar occurrences of these things. In the village of Gorbak, September 13th,